Hey everyone, it's David Bombal coming to you from Cisco Live in Barcelona, and really happy to finally meet Jason. Jason Gooley, he's been on my channel before. He's a wizard when it comes to a lot of products, but I'm going to let him talk about himself better than me. He'll do a better job. So Jason, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me again. I appreciate it. So I'm Jason Gooley. I've been with Cisco for about 6 years now, which is crazy to even think. I came from a customer, and I was responsible for everything that said the word Cisco on it. So data center, contact center, routing, switching, security, everything, which was great. But I also lost all my hair because of it. Used to have a nice flowing head of hair, but it went away. But thank you again for having me. I really do appreciate it. So recently I've been working on, we just finished writing another book for the crew here. It was CCIE and CCDE Evolving Technology Study Guide, which is a really good book to talk about the new blueprint. We cover things like IoT, cloud, and of course programmability. And I think the really cool thing about it is it doesn't just apply for people who are going for their CCIEs. I mean, really, good, if you pick up that book, it's an ebook, by the way, so you can download it. You can get it at Cisco Press or on Amazon. It gives you a really good foothold of where to begin with stuff. So where to begin with things like DevNet, programmability, different tools that they have available, what cloud really means, right? Yeah. It's not just somebody else's computer, although
it is.
It's somebody else's, a lot of computers, I guess. And then the different pieces and components of what we're trying to move towards from our industry. So it's really nice to be able to see, that when we say evolving technologies, it's really what's happening in the world, and kind of you can usually put a pin in how the CCIE is to where technology is moving towards, which is kind of nice.
So grab that mic. Sure. So Jason, I mean, we were talking before we started recording about like the future. Is a CCIE still worth it? And I still want to talk about your book because there's a lot of good content in that. Like in your book, you talk a lot about like network automation, stuff like that. So it seems the industry is moving towards that. And I've had questions from viewers about should I even consider getting my CCIE, or is it kind of pointless? Should I just go full on into network automation? So I'll give you back the mic and you tell us your thoughts.
Sure. So I get this one a lot, actually, because I'm kind of on both sides of the fence, which really...
Because you're a CCIE, yeah?
Yes. So I'm a CCIE in routing and switching and in service provider. And then when you think about programmability and automation, a lot of people, they tense up. They really think that, for the people who have been doing this for a long time, they feel like they might get themselves automated out of a job, or they'll be less relevant somehow. But the truth of the matter is, I'm fortunate that we're sitting here in the CCIE lounge at Cisco Live, and I work with a lot of the folks at Cisco Learning on different components of the CCIE exams, as well as a lot of blogging and things like that. And one of the things that I think is really important is that it's just a new skill set. It's a new tool for your tool build, right? Yeah. You still have to know how OSPF works. You still have to know what routing means and what switching means and why VLANs are important. All that stuff doesn't go away. Yeah. But it's just, if you really think about it, what you're trying to do is free up more time in your life as an engineer to deal with more important things for the businesses. So you're thinking about, what does the next 3 to 5 years look like versus, man, I gotta somebody's moving a phone and plugging it into this device. I have to make sure I turn off PoE, or I turn on PoE, and I have to set the VLAN and do all these different things. That's all mundane stuff that we can automate, that we don't have to worry about anymore. So when it comes to that, I still believe, yes, you need to know both moving forward. I think you don't have to be a developer, though. When I say that, let me explain what I mean. You're not going out and making or developing an application like SAP or something like that, right? Yeah. What you're doing as a network engineer is you're taking those skills you already know and automating them, right? So you're building little scripts and programs to automate the things that you're doing manually on the command line. So again, you can rest easy knowing that you don't have to develop some big software programs or anything like that. None of that is necessary for what Metaldevops is, or any of the stuff that we're talking about in the DevNet zone, or here even in the CCIE area. To your other question about, is the CCIE still worth it? To me personally, that was a catapult in my life. So for me, it's a validation, right? If you're studying for your CCIE, it's said that if you're studying for your CCIE, you're at your peak, right, as far as knowledge goes, because you're trying to remember it all and you're trying to learn all these different new technologies and topics and master it to the best of your ability, so you're able to take the exam. in my opinion, it really does help open doors, and you almost get that instant credibility, right? If somebody walks in and they're a CCIE, you kind of think, okay, well, at this point they might have at least gone through a whole bunch of hours of labs, right?
Yeah,
so they at least have that, right? And it doesn't necessarily mean that every CCIE is equal, but what it does mean is that they had some sort of a starting point, right? Yeah. And I think from a career perspective, what I tell a lot of people who are asking me about the development versus CCIE and CCNA comes up a lot, is that both of them are just equally as important. And really it's just an additional skill set that you can apply to one another, right? There are people who are coming out of the woodworks who are actual true-on software developers who are looking into getting into networking because of things like AWS and Azure, right? Yeah. So their work has put them in a position where they now have to be responsible for this software workloads and things that they've never even thought they'd ever have to touch, right?
Good point, yeah.
But now they're part of that, unfortunately, for them is they need to learn a networking aspect of it. So they're learning networking, and now we're talking about how do they automate stuff, and well, they already know a lot of the development, so they're actually just learning the network concepts. And one of the things that, if I may,
go for it.
I think is really important is, within Cisco, there's a library, a digital learning library you can go to that has a bunch of different courses at learningatcisco.com. And one of them in there's one called NPDESI, which is basically if you're a network engineer and you want to learn about DevOps and things like that, that's the course for you. And then there's another one called NPDEV, which is assuming you're a developer and you need to know intro basics to networking. So if you do both of those, you're really set. Also, they apply to the continuing education for CCIE, so I just want to put that out there. But NPDEV is really a good one for if you're trying to learn intro to networking and you're already fluent in DevOps or development skills. So it's pretty important. So hopefully that sheds some light on some of that.
Yeah, no, definitely. Sorry, we'll get the mic right eventually because I'm not good at this. But so that's great. So tell me, your book is about CCIE and CCDE.
Correct.
Is that right?
The new one, yes.
Yeah. So could you give some information just for people who are not sure about that? What's the difference between a CCIE and a CCDE? How do they differ? What kind of roles do they play, kind of thing?
Certainly. So if anybody's familiar with my path on the internet and all the different tweeting and stuff I've been doing, I've been going for the CCDE for a couple years now. And then I had to put a pin in it because we had children. And then when I thought I was done, I had another child. So that's I put a pin in that for right now. But really, ultimately, the difference here is that the CCIE is an expert level at a specific technology. So it could be routing and switching, wireless, service provider, collaboration, you name it. And a CCDE is essentially a design expert. And what that means is that you kind of need to know the underlying fundamentals of how to design and architect the network to make sure that these different components can run over the top of it. So you're learning about things like why is it important to use a specific type of spanning tree, or maybe spine and leaf and completely remove spanning tree altogether, right? So all these different things are enabling you to be able to run different applications over the top of it. And then to take it a step further, a lot of major organizations and large enterprises, they'll have different roles. So they'll have a role that might be somebody who handles all the routing and switching and security, and they hand over network design to an actual design architect who works in that capacity in those different facilities. So sometimes it's a delineation of role where you're actually working with a network architect, they'll design it, and then they'll hand it to a CCIE to implement. So depending on what type of role it is. And then if you're fortunate, like I was, and a lot of the folks out there who have to do all of the above, you get experience in all these different areas of the network, both from a design and architecture perspective, as well as kind of the how do I build it and implement it, just the same.
So some more questions. Do you need to be a CCIE to become a CCDE? Or what is the sort of recommended path to get to that certification?
So it's a great point. The answer there is no. One of the things that I think is important to understand is that it depends on what path you're looking to go down. For me, I've always loved architecting and designing networks, and I got into networking prior to that, right? So you have to start somewhere learning about different technologies, routing and switching and things like that, and then I really fell in love with just installing networks and designing how they're going to work or how the traffic is going to flow and different things like that. So I kind of fell in love with the whole idea of this, and it started off where there was the CCDA, which is design associate, and then it came the CCDP. For the longest time, that was it, with the design professional. Yeah. And then, Cisco said, we really need somebody to fit that gap. There's a huge gap between CCDP and then somebody who actually is a true-on enterprise architect for designing networks, and they came out with the CCDE. And in my opinion, it's a really good way of learning what you know or what you don't know. Yeah. And like I've unfortunately haven't passed it a few times myself, but it's one of the fairest exams I think you can ever sit, because when you go in there, you kind of know why, right? Leaving, because it's a design thing. Yeah. And once you learn design best practice, that stuff doesn't really necessarily change. So if you go in and you don't answer something correctly, in a way you're kind of getting an idea of why you might not have answered that correctly based on the scenario that you're connecting with. And from a CCIE perspective, obviously you have to be an expert at all things for that particular track. So you have to know all the different ways to be able to do it. And with the exams, obviously, you need to know all the different ways and methods to be able to configure a specific task or subtask so you can make sure that you achieve that goal. But I think that starting out, the good thing is that there's so many resources now that are available through Learning and through Cisco Press and YouTube and all these different capabilities that weren't there before. When we first started going for CCIEs, or heck, even CCNA back in the day, they really didn't have anything. And then they started off with 1 or 2 books maybe, and you were lucky if you could figure out how to buy a router or switch to actually practice. But nowadays there's all these labs available. We have online and resources that gives us the capability of actually learning with our hands on. It's pretty nice.
That's great. Yeah. So Jason, a question that I often get asked, and I'm sure you get asked this all the time, is should I study CCNA or Python? Should I study CCNP or Python? And the big one is, is a CCIE even worth it today, or should I just get my CCNP and go and study Python and forget about CCIE and CCDE and all these things? Sure. So what do you think about that?
So my recommendation and answer to that would be to do both.
Okay.
And the reason being is if you go down a development path, you're going to learn a tremendous amount, right? But you still have to have the fundamentals of how to work on networks and how all the technology works together to be able to apply those development tasks to it. Yeah. When I just recently talked to somebody today about CCNA and Python, and the truth of the matter is it's something that you want to pick up experience on doing both. But once you get familiar with some of the networking concepts, you can practice some of the development concepts on that technology and make sure that it indeed works and has the same outcome of what you would do if you're sitting at the command line, for that matter. So that's a great question.
So if someone's got a CCNP and is in two minds about, should they do CCIE or they should just concentrate on Python network automation. Your first book is a lot of network automation stuff. Sure. So would you still advise doing CCIE, or do you think that's just a personal thing?
No, I would definitely, it's definitely personal to whoever's going for that. If their love and passion is for doing networking and things of that nature and getting deep into the technology, I would definitely say to continue to pursue the CCIE for sure. But if they're at a point in their networking career that they're thinking, I really want to start taking advantage of development and DevOps and things like that and applying what I know already to that, I would say you can look at that from a development perspective and learning things like Python and all the different technologies at DevNet and all that other stuff. I think it definitely applies as well. And as much as I love to say it, I love to see people doing both and continuing going down the CCIE track or CCDE and then going down the Python path or development path as well. So it's kind of useful.
Great. So Jason, before we get too much into the technical stuff,
sure.
You've just had a new baby, is that right?
That is correct.
So tell me a bit about your family life and how do you? So this is another really important thing. Actually, sorry, you must tell us about your personal life, but then also tell us how on earth do you balance your personal life with all this work stuff? Do you have any tips and tricks, for someone who's, I can't cope, got a kid, got a family, got work. So tell us a bit about that.
Okay, so I guess if I could offer any tips on that is that you need to be very mindful to your spouse to make sure that you are helping as much as possible. But
tell us about your family.
My family is wonderful. So I have a 4-year-old little girl who is absolutely the love of my life, and I just had a little boy named Jackson. So he's now 8 months old, and just started crawling about 2 weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
And he is literally all over the place. He goes from room to room, and he's lightning fast. And if you don't keep an eye on him, he'll be somewhere where he's not supposed to, in something he's not supposed to be, and that's for sure. So you have to put a perimeter firewall around my son most of the time just to make sure that he's not in something he's not supposed to be into. But it's great, though. I mean, I think the biggest thing is from a balance perspective is it's really important, and it's one of my blessings for being able to work at Cisco is I work from home all the time, and that allows me to have more time with my family. As much as you'd think you're constantly in the office and you can never leave, that work-life balance really does come into play because I can just take a moment, go upstairs and see my family, and then come down and dive right back into it, which I think is very important. And to make sure that you're cognizant enough of the fact that you might have been in the basement for 14 hours straight, and you might need to go see some light of day and take a break from that as well and see your family. So that is one tip I can offer is just make sure you're aware of what's going on around you.
So, I mean, you've got 2 CCIEs. So how did you manage getting double CCIE and family? And at that time, I'm not sure if you were at Cisco or not, so tell us a bit about that.
Oh, this is great. So the first one I was not at Cisco yet, but my wife was pregnant. So there's a little tip for you. If she's pregnant, you might be able to actually get some time to go down and do some labs and stuff like that, not have to chase after kids yet. So that worked out really well for me. And then the second time I was already at Cisco, and my wife was pregnant again. And it was funny because I was actually in the process of going for the CCDE exam, and a buddy of mine was like, you really have to go for the CCDE. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna try it. So I'm going for it, and then it was like, but you really have to learn service provider in order to go for the CCDE. So I'm like, okay. So the next thing you know, I'm doing all the stuff I needed to do for the service provider CCIE, and the conversation did not go well when I told my wife that I was thinking about sitting the CCIE service provider. But I ended up passing that, thank God, and I got that. And again, it was before my child came, and then once the child came, I had to put a pin in the CCDE. So maybe when he's 20 or something, I'll be able to come back around and start working on that again. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's how do you say, it's a real blessing to have someone that supports you in what we're doing, because it's tough. I mean, it takes a lot of time. And I mean, at the moment, you were telling me earlier, you travel a lot, so that's tough. So any tips about, work-life balance, just from your experience, that can help people who are new or who are struggling?
I would say make the time. The biggest thing for me is that when I travel, I make the time to get on either FaceTime or WebEx with my daughter, and I get on the phone with them and make sure that I still sing them goodnight and do all these different things. And that really carries a lot of weight with your family, because you're still there. It's like you're present, And with all the technology, obviously, I mean, we're sitting here. We originally met via video. Yeah. And we have that capability of making that connection, and it works. So I would say, take the time out to actually make the connection with your family, and even if you're just checking in here and there, it really does make a huge difference. It really does.
Now, that's great. And I mean, I almost forgot to ask you this, so I'm going to ask you about your new channel that you're starting, because you're a heavy metal fan.
Yes,
is that right?
Very much so.
So you need to tell us a bit about, like, what's this new channel thing that you're starting? Okay,
so this idea had come to me because I do a lot of different stuff with DevOps and programmability and networking, and everybody's like, well, where's your YouTube channel? Where's your video blog? Or where's this? And currently I don't have one, And I just got to thinking about it, and I'm like, how would I do a video blog? And I came up with this hashtag called Metaldevops. And what I'm going to try to do, we'll see how it goes. What I'm going to try to do is actually come out, do some guitar riffs, maybe some drums, some cool stuff on each episode, and then talk about different types of technology, right? And but little, short, quick hit, like 10-minute little videos, and get a bunch of different guests. I'm fortunate and blessed that I know a whole lot of different people, and it's not, hey, it's the Jason Gooley show, everybody come look at me. It's more sharing my passion of technology and heavy metal, and my love for heavy metal with everybody, and then just getting different people to share their perspective on different technologies. I think it's pretty neat, and I haven't figured out the form of how I'm going to do it yet, if it's going to be YouTube or different things like that, but It's starting. It's starting, and I got the hashtag out there on my Twitter now. So we'll occasionally I'll just throw it in somewhere when nobody's looking. So we'll see how it all pans out. But wish me luck on that.
Oh, we'll do.
All right.
No, definitely.
You'll have to come on.
Oh well. So Jason, your second book, the one that's like CCDE focused, did you say that book is relevant for anyone who wants to learn a bit about like automation, stuff like that? It's not just CCDE, is that right?
Correct. So it's an evolving technology that is now part of the blueprint for all the CCIEs and the CCDE exam, all the expert level exams. But what's important is that it's new to, a lot of this stuff is new to everybody, to be completely honest with you. I mean, the idea is to just get familiar with it, start dipping your toe in it and learning about some of the different technologies. And that book is really geared towards, the blueprint for all these exams, but also taking people who are traditionally network engineers or design engineers and teaching them how to learn about these newer technologies like IoT, cloud, and development, things like that. So very much for everybody.
So can you give us a breakdown, sort of like, because I don't have it in front of me, kind of what chapters or what sections does it cover? Because you mentioned IoT, you mentioned like I know there's Python in there. So just quickly, what's in that book? Just like not as a plug, but just so that if someone's interested, they know sort of what that book covers.
Sure. So it is only a 3-chapter book.
Okay.
And then those are the 3 evolving technology pieces of the blueprint that we had decided on with learning at Cisco. And really what it is that one of the sections is on IoT and all the different pieces and components of IoT. So you're talking about things like manufacturing plant floors and why that's so important to businesses, how to get started with that, all the different protocols and pieces and components that build up that environment. And then switching gears, you have things like cloud. So we're talking about things like AWS and Azure and why cloud is so important. And then the programmability, we call it programmability chapter, is more based on things around SDN, why is the concept of a controller so important? How do you get started working with controllers and things like that from a programmability perspective? What are APIs? I mean, it's literally starting at the beginning, like what is an API? Why is an API important? What is an example of an API? What would I do to use an API? And then we start diving into like different tools like Google Postman and things like that to really walk you through in that book how to start actually using it. And then we provide links to different sandboxes that are available through DevNet and other various places where you can log in and literally get hands-on taking what's in that book and experiencing it live right on the command line. So it's pretty nice.
So I think you've answered this, but I just wanted to make sure. Can anyone get that book, or do they have to be CCIE level, or if I'm just starting learning about Python, I think that's kind of what you're saying, that I can get that book even if I'm not interested in CCD, I just want to learn about Python, or if I want to learn about AWS, that book is a good starter, or do I need something else?
I agree 100%. So, and that's one of the things that, because it's branded CCIE, CCDE Evolving Technology Study Guide, there's a pointed audience to it, but the way I write and the way that my mind works is it can be for anybody. So if you just pick it up, and it's an ebook, right? So you can get it, like I said, on Cisco Press or Amazon, and you can read through, even if you just want to read that one chapter on programmability and not even focus on cloud or vice versa, you have that capability of doing it, and it's a really good primer to get you started. And then as far as some of the more advanced resources, like the other book for network programmability and automation that we wrote is a good book. It also gives you more information on things like data center and how to use, you mentioned earlier, automating, using things like auto-config and scripting and different pieces and components that are on-box in the different devices that Cisco sells, as well as the off-box using APIs and different tools and things of that nature. So you can start off with either one of those books, and it's a really good primer to get you started. The CCIE Evolving Technologies Study Guide is refreshed with DNA Center, and something that we talked about previously in a different session. So you have all the DNA Center examples in this new book. So it's more refined and refreshed from that perspective. So it's a good place to start.
That's great. So Jason, I know we've been talking for a long time. Really want to say thanks very much for talking with me today and sharing your knowledge with everyone. And all the very best with the young baby, and
thank you.
or should I say young toddler almost, because was it a boy or girl?
It's a little boy, and he's crawling all over the place right now, and it's getting to the point where I can imagine that he'll probably be trying to stand here pretty soon. So 8 months old and already in 12-month clothes, and he's a little soldier, the guy. He's pretty cool.
So again, I just wanted to say thanks so much, Jason, and Look forward to having more calls with you, man.
Very much so. Thank you.
Great
for
to see
having
you
me.
in the person.
Thank you, everybody, for watching, and hopefully you'll check out the Metaldevops soon.
All the best.
Take care.